Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a thriller horror film, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The film begins with candid and uncomfortable footage of an open-heart surgery in which the patient's heart beats while doctors poke around in his chest with tools. After the procedure, the cardiac surgeon named Steven walks down the hall with an anesthesiologist. They chat about trivial matters, including wristwatches. After work, Steven meets a teenager named Martin at the diner. They both plan to move to Gotham one day, where they will begin their careers as criminal geniuses, the Penguin and the Joker, respectively. In the meantime, they have a peaceful lunch while having an awkward conversation. After lunch, admiring the views of the city from the observation deck, Steven hands Martin a gift, an expensive watch. In the evening, over a home-cooked dinner, Steven discusses family matters with his wife Anna, his son, and his daughter named Kim. Before going to bed, Steven performs conjugal duty with elements of professional fetishism. His wife pretends to be fully under anesthesia. The next morning at work, Steven meets Martin, who comes to thank the doctor for the gift. But this is contrary to his request not to appear in the hospital. The anesthesiologist notices them. He has exactly the same watch. When Martin leaves, Steven admits that the boy is a classmate of his daughter, who dreams of becoming a cardiac surgeon, and he took him under his patronage in order to introduce him to the profession. The next day, the doctor walks with Martin. It is clear from their conversation that Martin's father has died. Steven invites him to dinner to introduce him to his family. When Martin arrives with gifts for all the family members and is introduced to them, it is clear that he cannot be Kim's classmate, as he doesn't even know her. After dinner, the adults offer to let Martin stay the night, but he doesn't want to leave his mother alone. Before going to bed, Steven's wife asks how he knows Martin. It turns out that Martin's father, before he died in an accident, was Steven's patient. Here it becomes clear that Steven spends time with Martin just to console him for the loss of his dad. In addition, since he feels guilty about his father's death, he buys Martin gifts and lies to others about his identity so as not to ruin his reputation. As a return of gratitude, Martin invites Steven to dinner at his home. After the meal, Martin offers to let Steven stay to watch a movie. But in the midst of watching it, Martin goes to bed, leaving him alone with his mother. She takes advantage of the fact that they are alone and tries to seduce Steven, but he prefers to be faithful to his wife and leaves. In the morning, Martin shows up at the hospital to see Steven. He complains of chest pains and worries that it's an inherited heart condition, the same as that of his father, who died during surgery. While Martin is being tested, he asks Steven what he thinks of his mother, but Steven dislikes the subject. After this, Steven begins to avoid communication with Martin and stops taking his calls. Most likely, Martin tried to introduce Steven to his mother in order to find a new father figure. During a barbecue, a colleague confesses to Steven that he saw a teenager near his car. Apparently, he wants to meet him. Later, Kim tells Steven that Martin met her after school and gave her a ride on his motorcycle. Steven doesn't like the fact that his daughter is talking to Martin, but he doesn't stop her from seeing him. Instead, he calls Martin, but he's just standing in front of Steven's house on his motorcycle and doesn't answer the phone. The next morning, Steven discovers that his son is paralyzed. He cannot move his legs or stand up. The parents take him to the hospital, where the son is urgently examined, but no abnormalities or disorders are found. Eventually, the doctors let him go home. However, before he even makes it to the exit, he collapses, unable to control his legs. The son is returned to his room, and they decide to keep him overnight. When Anna visits her son in the morning, Martin is already there. Leaving Anna alone with her son, Martin goes up to the cafeteria to talk to Steven. There, Martin informs him that he must restore balance and avenge his father's death. Steven must kill someone in his family, otherwise they will all die. First, their legs will stop working, then they will refuse to eat. Then, their eyes will bleed, and finally, death will follow. To avoid this, Steven must decide whom he will kill in revenge for Martin's father, who died during Steven's surgery. Steven doesn't take his ridiculous words seriously and tells the guards to escort Martin out. However, Steven later finds out that his son refuses to eat, so an agitated Steven tries to force a donut into his mouth. The whole relationship between Martin and Steven is inspired by the ancient Greek mythological story of the sacrifice of Iphigenia, which can also be called the killing of the sacred deer. In the story, King Agamemnon is traveling with his army to the Trojan War. During this journey, he kills a sacred deer that belongs to the goddess Artemis. Artemis is offended and retaliates by neutralizing Agamemnon's ships. She declares that King Agamemnon and his army will not reach Troy unless he kills his eldest daughter, offering her as a human sacrifice in exchange for the sacred stag. The conclusions of this ancient story are many, but in most cases, Agamemnon reluctantly sacrifices his daughter. The main point of this story for this film is that Agamemnon represents Stephen, while Artemis represents Martin, who wants to seek revenge. Most importantly, just like Stephen, Agamemnon's love of leadership, pride, and reputation are tested by an uncontrollable external force. A socially powerful man is rendered powerless and reminded that he is just a man, regardless of what his community thinks of him and what he thinks of himself. The film states that Martin isn't a god, but he's set in a world where karma takes place automatically. It is as if there is an outside observer who balances bad deeds with punishment. Most likely, Martin doesn't have any superpowers, because if he did, he could have protected his father from death or avenged him in the first place. An eye for an eye is the justice that reigns in this film's universe. Stephen knows this, as well as the teen himself, but until the end, he tries to deny this mechanism. While the parents are in the hospital with their son, their daughter Kim spends time with Martin. She has developed a reverent and pure first love for him and undresses in front of Martin. However, he chooses to leave her alone and walks away. After a series of tests, the doctors cannot find the cause of the son's condition. Stephen suspects a psychosomatic reaction and tries to get his son out for a frank conversation to find out the causes, but nothing comes out. At the same time, Kim falls to the ground during choir lessons. She also has a leg failure, just like her brother, and after a while, she refuses to eat. Unable to find a rational explanation, Stephen drives to Martin's house, where he bangs on the door. Martin doesn't come out, but this doesn't stop Stephen from threatening him. Afterward, Anna wonders whether her husband might have made a mistake during the surgery, but Stephen denies it. He claims that surgeons, unlike anesthesiologists, don't kill patients. The next day, Kim gets a call from Martin, but Anna forbids her to talk to Martin and takes away her phone, to which Kim snaps that she will soon stop feeling her legs too. Anna visits Martin at home. He tells her that after his father was killed, Stephen flirted with his mother. Meanwhile, doctors organize a symposium, but cannot find any medical explanations for the children's condition. They allow them to be taken home, subject to care and mandatory feeding through a feeding tube. The next day, Anna meets with Stephen's colleague, the anesthesiologist. She is interested in Martin's father's medical records, but the anesthesiologist can't get them. However, he can tell her something from memory in exchange for a hormone therapy. The anesthesiologist reveals that Stephen had a few drinks before that surgery, resulting in a fatal error and the death of the patient, Martin's father. Learning the truth, Anna starts arguing with Stephen in the evening. He lashes out in response, not understanding what he can do to rectify the situation. But in the middle of the night, Stephen wakes up and leaves the house. In the morning, Stephen wakes his wife and takes her to the basement. There, Martin is found bound and beaten up. It turns out, Stephen has kidnapped him to force him to lift the curse on his family. While Anna makes lemonade for Martin, Stephen talks to him, calling him a murderer. However, Martin assures him that there is only one murderer, and that is Stephen himself. Martin says that to continue his life with a clean slate, he must commit another murder. Anna is washing blood from the trunk of the car when she hears a gunshot. She runs to the basement, where Stephen threatens Martin with a shotgun. But the boy reminds them that with his death, 3 more will die sooner or later, and they are Stephen's children and wife. So Anna convinces Stephen to put the gun down. Meanwhile, the children in the room discuss what is going on. Kim tells her brother that one of them will have to die, and she thinks that this someone will be her little brother. She even asks permission to take his MP3 after he dies. Frightened, the brother crawls across the floor in search of scissors. He cuts off his hair, as his father once asked him to do to impress him. Then, the son tells his father that he wants to follow in his footsteps and become a doctor. Such obvious subservience doesn't go unnoticed, and in the evening, Stephen sobs in the garden, unable to hide his emotions and unable to make a choice. The next day, Stephen goes to the school, where he inquires about the children's academic performance. In this way, he wants to compare which one of his 2 children is more worthy of living, but he receives no clear answer even in that way. At this time, Anna takes the children down to the basement to talk to Martin, for whom she is treating his wounds. Anna kneels down in front of Martin and kisses his bloody feet, hoping to beg forgiveness and lift the curse. Later that night, Anna lies down beside Stephen and tells him he should kill one of the children because they can always have another child. Apparently, these empathy-lacking dialogues are very frequent throughout the story, as the film is not realistic at all. Kim crawls down to Martin's basement in the middle of the night, where she offers him the chance to run away together, but he refuses. Stephen wakes up and notices that his daughter is missing. He goes down to the basement, but she is not there either. In a panic, Stephen goes to the street, where he finds Kim crawling away on the sidewalk. He brings her home to treat her scratched feet. In the process, Kim asks him to kill her to save her mother and brother, but it's probably teenage maximalism multiplied by rejected love that's talking. In the morning, Anne admits to Stephen that she has let Martin go. If they can do nothing to save the children, there is no reason to hold him captive. A day later, the son begins to have an eye bleed, which is exactly the third of the predicted symptoms and a precursor to imminent death. Kim calls her parents, and they realize it's time to make a decision. Stephen binds the children and his wife, seats them in the living room, and puts sacks over their heads. Pulling a cap over his eyes, Stephen grabs a shotgun, spins around on his axis to lose his orientation, and randomly stops in front of one of them. In the process, he shoots, but the first shot misses. And it turns out the second one misses as well. But the third round of Russian roulette turns out to be effective. The bullet hits the son in the chest. After the shot, Stephen lifts his sack and watches as blood pours down his son's t-shirt. In the final scene, Martin, with a battered but gradually healing face, walks into the diner where he once had lunch with Stephen, who is already sitting there with his daughter and wife. Martin walks past while they studiously avoid meeting his gaze and sit down at the counter. Sipping water, Martin meets Kim's gaze before her parents take her away. Martin has a blank stare. The balance has finally been restored. Based on this, the ending of the film implies that the eye for an eye premise doesn't work. It's shown that once revenge paralyzes the spirit and creates a vicious murderous cycle, the person is trapped there, and it is difficult to get out. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.